Welcome to the B2B Digital Marketer Podcast, a podcast helping you to end your struggle with digital marketing, helping you to pave a new and better path to target and capture your ideal customer. Each week, we teach you how insiders and experts debunk the dreary and become engines of innovation. Now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Okay, B2B DM gang, I'm excited about the discussion that we're going to have today, because while we can go in a lot of different places because we can mix strategy and tactical and stuff, Paul Slack is going to help guide us into really focusing in on some things that we may be missing and some areas that we may need to be looking at. So Paul, thanks for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, hey Jim, I'm super excited to be here. Really excited to connect with your group and talk to them about some digital marketing things.
And so with that, let's try to put some focus in on and talk a little bit about your background, because you've had a lot of experience in this space, and then talk a little bit about really what your area and focus is on. I know it's digital, and I know it's digital marketing as a whole, but we really want to look at the B2B element.
Yeah, you bet. And, our focus is B2B digital marketing. So I'm happy to kind of get you to that story. My story kind of begins, and I'm going to date myself right here, Jim, but I got into technology sales back in 1990. And so, back when, big iron and mainframes were kind of ruling the day, I was brought in as a young sales guy and kind of taught how to, sell. In fact, some of the best sales training around back then was in technology sales. And so I kind of grew up in that. And from 1990 to 98, I was involved in a few technology companies, some really big ones that aren't really around anymore. Ultimately in 98, I found myself as the national account manager for a large storage company with a $21 million quota. And really kind of just at the top of my sales game when this little thing called the internet happened. And I was recruited out of technology sales to help start this internet company that had a very interesting concept. And that was selling software over the internet and actually delivering the software through the internet. Because back then, Jim, you probably remember this, before the internet, you could buy software, but you had to go and buy the CD, stick it in your computer. Well, this is what was real revolutionary, because you could actually buy the software over the internet. They'd deliver it right to your computer, and there was licensing and things like that we were managing. And so we're really excited about that and went to work for this company in about 98, 99. Of course, you know what happened in 2000, that wonderful internet bubble burst, and the world kind of settled down from that. And I discovered, opportunity kind of becomes the mother of invention, right? So I'm out there trying to decide, what am I going to do next? And I kind of looked at everything that I knew at that point, which was B2B sales and how to help customers acquire the things that they need from a business perspective. I knew internet marketing, but really what was amazing, Jim, back then, everything was so transactional. All the focus on the internet was, hey, how to make a sale, how to get somebody's credit card information. Nobody was focusing on, especially in the B2B space, the marketing side. So if you think of the internet economy as the alphabet, everybody was focusing on X, Y, and Z. How do you get that customer across the finish line? Nobody was talking about A through W. And so I decided to get out of that internet business and basically start my own business, which was helping companies really leverage the internet, specifically B2B, to get the right kind of buyers into their business, learn about their business, and really help them generate leads for their sales team. And that was back in 2000. And so I did that for 10 years, had the opportunity to sell that agency, which was a B2B focused agency, in 2010, and went to work for the company that bought our agency, and really discovered while I was there, Jim, that I just loved B2B. The company that bought us was B2B, B2C, social media. They did a little bit of everything. And so I left there in 2014 and started Vindy Digital, and really focusing in on helping that mid-market B2B company really leverage the internet, all the channels that are out there. How do you bring them together to help accomplish your business objectives? And so that's how I got into the space. And what really gets us passionate today is working with that that B2B company that has a sales organization that is trying to figure out, what do I need to be doing digitally to really get in front of my targeted customer, tell them the right story, get them to want to take the next step, and then really support my sales team once we're actively involved in a deal. So that's kind of our backstory.
Well, and as you're talking, I started thinking about the discussion that we had prior to this interview, where we were looking at and discussing the entire strategy and all the particular elements. And you talked about omni-channel. We talked about all of these different facets that could be part of my, purview, or I like to use the word ecosystem, right?
Right.
And so when I start thinking about that, and the discussion we started having was around, let's just say orphaned content, right?
Right.
And how these things just kind of sit out there and we just do a lot of this stuff and people say, oh, hey, I tried digital, just didn't work for us. And, you even mentioned a client example. And so if you can, try to talk about how this maturation process works, because I think that kind of gets into the strategy. It's like, I just do this stuff and it doesn't work.
Right. Absolutely. When we start working with a client, oftentimes we'll hear, like you just said, Jim, oh my gosh, we tried digital and it just didn't work for us. And then the next question is, well, what did you do? And often we'll find, well, they tried one thing, we call it the one trick pony. We started blogging and, we wrote a blog every other week or so and nothing really happened. We didn't get any leads from that. Or, we're posting some stuff up on our LinkedIn page and, nothing's really happening. Or, man, we tried pay-per-click and we ran some ads in Google and we got a lot of traffic and spent a lot of money, but we didn't really get any value. And so the challenge with all of that is those are tactics, and tactics need to tie into an overarching strategy. And so one of the things that we try to help companies think through are these 4 pillars that we feel are critical for every B2B business to consider when they're thinking about, well, how do I implement digital for my business? Because Jim, as you know, digital is a big word, right? There's a lot of things that go underneath digital. So one thing that businesses need to start with is kind of the planning pillar. And the planning pillar really just begins with, identifying who is my customer, right? Who are we trying to reach? What kind of business, what industries, what SIC codes, what size of business, who are the functions and roles that we are trying to reach within those businesses. That's kind of 101 stuff. But then really, what are the things that are keeping that person awake at night? And how are the services that we provide really meeting their needs? How can we become their problem solver? And how do we do that in a messaging framework? So when we're planning, we're trying to understand our customer and what ways that we can message to them that are going to help them understand how we can solve problems for them. One of the things we say here at Vendy, Jim, is marketing is an exercise in memorization. So our job is to communicate to our buyer, hey, we solve this problem. If you have this problem, we solve this problem, right? So when we're planning, we really want to get very clear on the problems that we solve and how do we communicate those things. We also want to get very clear on how do we measure success. Like ultimately, we want the business to grow. And so digital has to be a contribution to our growth. And we need to back into, well, how many new deals do we need? What does that equate to opportunities all the way back to ultimately leads and impressions? All that gets figured out in planning. And so you kind of have to go through that discipline first. And then from there, you move into the next pillar, which is all about activating your audience. Now that we know who we're going after and the messaging that's going to resonate with them and what winning looks like for us, let's go hang out where they hang out and let's go build awareness and start presenting that message so that we can start getting that memorization. We want to file away in their brain, hey, this is who Vendy Digital is and these are the problems that we solve. Every business has to do that. And that's really the goal of activating our audience. That's where we do post in social, or we do advertise in social, or we do run retargeting campaigns or advertising campaigns. All that becomes a function of that goal that we're trying to accomplish when we're activating our audience. And then the third pillar really is about establishing authority and empathy. So, we're doing these things to ultimately drive people to our website because, Jim, we believe on our website, that's where we have the best opportunity to convince a potential customer that A, we're qualified to solve their problem, and that we're doing that in a very clear and concise way. And then B, we have empathy, that we actually, not only are we qualified, but we want to solve their problem. We're here to help you, and we want to help you. And the best place to do that is on our website. And quite frankly, the best place to do it on our website, in our opinion, is your blog. And so if you're telling me, hey, I'm blogging and I'm not getting any results, well, maybe you're not doing it in a way that's aligned with your overall strategy, where you're really trying to establish empathy and authority with your blog content. And then ultimately, because we are talking B2B, Jim, the last pillar, the fourth pillar in the process, is nurturing relationships, because we cannot control when a buyer has that compelling event that's going to make them want to transact with us. And so our job as marketers in that fourth pillar is to make sure that we are top of mind, that we're reinforcing over and over and over and over again, our value proposition, and doing it in a way that's useful and helpful to the customer. And so if you want digital to work, you really have to work through those four pillars. And, we were talking about this before we went on live today. And, those are all things that, it's hard to get from one agency. We talked about full service agencies, and really what does that mean? Ultimately, you've got to find people that are really good at delivering things within each of those pillars if you're going to succeed with a good digital strategy. So that's my long-winded answer to your question. Hopefully that helps.
Well, and I think there are a few things that really stood out to me that I want us to dig a little bit deeper into. And I think that was a great overview and contextual understanding of what we're talking about and the pillars that we need to focus in on. You had talked about contribution, and you talked about digital marketing, being a contribution to the overall sales. Now, if we start thinking about contribution and the contribution that used to exist for digital just a year ago versus the contribution that digital has to play now, what's changed?
Oh my gosh, so much has changed, Jim, as you can imagine, especially for all of us B2Bs. And I know that's the audience here today, so I'm excited to talk to you about these things because, the internet has kind of served, I feel like, the B2C transactional industries always first, right? And then we're laggards, if you will, in the B2B world. But there are great avenues today where we can contribute to the overall cause using digital that we didn't have before. And so, when we think about some fundamental things like content marketing, that's been around for a long time, and every business needs to be involved in content marketing. And when you hear me say content marketing, Jim, what I'm really talking about is being consistent in your blogging, being consistent in sharing content out in social that's really reinforcing your value proposition. But what's great today that we didn't necessarily have so much in the past is how can we get the awareness that we need for all that content marketing? Just a couple of years ago, if we're blogging, I think one of our biggest hopes for getting traffic to our website with that blog would be like search engine optimization. Do we have the right keywords? Are we showing up in Google for the right words so that when a buyer is looking for information on that topic, they find our blog, they come to our website? That's great, obviously. But today we can go to LinkedIn, for example, and we can dial into that perfect size business and that perfect person within that business and make sure that that person's going to see our content. And a lot of people have thought that LinkedIn is a very expensive place to go buy attention. And I'll submit to you, Jim, and you probably experienced this as well, 24 months ago, absolutely that was the case. But in today's world, LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft, and no knock on Microsoft, but they always have followed this suit of let somebody else figure out what works and then let's kind of follow along. And so they let Facebook kind of determine what advertising venues or products really serve the digital space, and they're emulating those very well today for the B2B consumer. And so what's great is we can create content and very affordably get it in the hands of our target customer through advertising channels like LinkedIn. Another great thing that they're offering today is what we call intent-based marketing. And so, instead of just creating a blog article, putting it on LinkedIn, putting some money behind it so the right people are seeing it, I can now have secondary campaigns that fire off based on what happens when somebody sees that blog post that we're promoting. For example, if they click on it, that can fire off a secondary campaign. If they actually click over to my website and do something there, that can fire off a different campaign. And so I guess to summarize this topic, buying awareness for B2B and super targeted awareness has never been easier than it is right now. And awareness is the top of the funnel. If somebody doesn't know that you exist and understand the problems that you can solve for them, you're the best kept secret in town.
Well, and as you're talking, I start thinking about there's tons of pitfalls all along that pathway.
Sure.
For me, even when you start talking about buying awareness, especially in B2B, because of lack of understanding of all those pillars, you'll often find somebody go, to trying to buy attention, and the attention that they're trying to buy is, here, take our demo.
Right. Exactly. So, and I'm glad you brought that up because, in the world of the B2B buying cycle, it starts with awareness, right? And then we do what we call at Vendy, nurture with knowledge, right? So we've created the awareness. Now there's this person that doesn't know that you exist, that does know that you exist, and you're communicating to them your value proposition. Marketing is an exercise in memorization, so we want to reinforce that. But then that's really where the content marketing game comes into play, because your job with content marketing, once you have that awareness, is to reinforce, how you are qualified to solve those problems. And so you can't go from, hey, here's who we are, we now exist, would you buy from me today? That doesn't work in the world of B2B. It's, hey, we exist, and now over time, I want to communicate to you, yes, we can solve your problem. Here's how we've done it for other companies. Here's how we can do it for you. And oh, by the way, when you're ready to learn more, here's how to take the next step with us. All of that's got to be communicated and engaged with in your digital strategy.
Well, okay, so I want to also dig a little bit deeper on this whole exercise in memorization, okay? Because when you start talking about congruency, when you start talking about connection, when you start talking about taking people down a particular, path, that whole exercise in memorization really could be leveraged in really all those pillars.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, when you start talking about the exercise of memorization and helping people implement the right behaviors, for that to happen, what are some of the things that you focus in on?
So great question, Jim. When you think about memorizing and the way I try to communicate it is, as I mentioned earlier, think of it like a file cabinet, right? All of us B2B buyers, we're walking around trying to do the best we can for the businesses that we serve. And we know that we've got obstacles and challenges and things that are preventing us from, getting to where ultimately we need to drive the business. And so as we're interacting online as human beings, we're interacting with knowledge, right? We're engaging and growing in knowledge as we read a post on LinkedIn or do a search in Google. And so our job is, as they run across our information, to go, oh, that, like for Vendy, that's the B2B lead generation company, or that's the B2B company that can help me develop a strategy. I'm going to file that name away in my file cabinet, so when I have that problem, I can remember to go there. And so the problem that we see businesses have today, Jim, is that they're trying to be too many things to too many people. And because, when you're trying to be everything to everybody, you're nothing to nobody, right? And so let's really hone in and add clarity to the 4 or 5 really big problems that you solve. I know you do everything, but we don't want to try to boil the ocean, right? Let's pick 4 or 5 things that you do really, really well, that you're very passionate about, that you can easily provide evidence and connect people to other clients that you've served very well in these 4 problem areas. And let's hone in on those, because guess what? Your sales reps, when they're engaged in the buying process, can talk about all the other things that you can do for them. But we need to pick those 4 or 5 really just best things that you do, that you're the most quality. And we kind of talked about this right before we jumped on today. It's what are those key things? We could all say we do digital marketing, but really there's 2 or 3 things we're really, really good at. Every business needs to go through that same exercise. And those are the things that we're going to talk about. So for example, a digital company, you would think, can do search engine optimization. And absolutely we do that as a business, but we freelance that out, Jim. So we have other agencies that we work with for SEO. So you're not going to see us talk a lot about search engine optimization in our digital communication when we're marketing our business. We're going to be talking about strategy. We're going to be talking about why problems and talking about problems are important, because that's really our bread and butter. That's what we're great at. So if we're going to really do well at making marketing and exercise and memorization, it's pick those 3 or 4 things and really, you kind of can think of it this way. It may sound like, gosh, only 3 or 4 things. Well, there's probably 25 ways you can talk about each one of those 3 or 4 things. And that becomes your content strategy. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think it goes back to the all-important pillar of doing that, right? Instead of just saying, well, we tried it and it didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes into, consistency is key, right? So once you've got a strategy and you're kind of committed to this stuff, you need to be committed to it. Giving it a try for 60 days, giving it a try for 6 months, and then going, oh, well, it didn't work. That's not going to get you where you need to go.
Definitely not. Okay. So for me, when I start thinking about, how do I, really, get to the point to where I can start making a difference. So like, for example, there was a video that I was watching to gather information about you and your organization. And the client who actually had a video testimonial was talking about how when they started, and then over the course of, they were a client for like a couple of years, 3 years, and they still are, I suspect, is that, they went and had this maturation process and then therefore continued to grow and now have, essentially the primary presence in their market space, right? So when you start talking about, making that path and going down that, there's an opportunity for an organization to, even if they're established, make a disruption, right? But oftentimes it doesn't happen rapidly, and something that's overnight. I mean, it is a process. So how can an organization make moves to really disrupt their space?
That's a great question, Jim. And I think right now, in the midst of where we find ourselves, we're all kind of almost being forced to reconsider and look at new moves that we have to make in terms of continuing to grow our businesses. And so, even when you think about digital, and you think about your budgets, I'm guessing people that are actually paying attention to this podcast or listening in, they've probably had their budgets taken away or reduced, or maybe they're not going to trade shows like they have been in the past. And so, one of the things that you just need to think about is, making a baby step in the process towards digital. So what are a handful of things that I can do right now that are going to help me, kind of get that awareness going? You certainly don't want to try to do everything all at once because of, A, limited resources, and B, one of the things that I love the most about digital is how much we can iterate and learn. It's not like, we've got this big trade show in Q1 of next year, and, we've got to build a big booth, and we've got to have all these physical assets developed and ready to go. The thing I love about digital is we can come up with a creative idea on how to move people through the funnel. We can actually engage on that. And because we get real-time feedback, we can pivot, learn, iterate, and grow. And so that's why I always recommend a crawl, walk, run strategy when a client's thinking about shifting dollars from what we would call traditional B2B marketing to digital marketing. Is, hey, let's not take half your budget. Let's just take part of your budget, and let's do some crawling things. Let's start with fundamental elements that we know are important, things you've got to have, like, is your website messaging correctly? Are you engaging in content marketing? And then let's start getting some awareness going. Let's see how that goes. Then maybe let's start running some what we'd call mid-funnel lead generation campaigns and see how that goes. And then maybe we can start working on marketing automation, and email marketing and things like that. And so, if you take it step by step and crawl, walk, run, you're going to have much better success over the long haul. And I know that particular testimonial you were talking about, I mean, we've been working with that client, believe it or not, since 2004. And so, obviously in 2004, Google was barely a household name, and certainly there wasn't LinkedIn or Facebook. So you have to be able to evolve and grow as the industry gives you new opportunities.
Well, I think for me, when you start looking at, you talked about the budget constraints, you talked about where to focus. A lot of organizations struggle to even create content for their needs. I'll give you a quick example. There was a software startup that was over in Europe trying to come into the U.S. market, and they had like 11 people that were part of their staff, but they're all developers, right? And so they came up with this particular product. It was cool. and they think it would actually fit into this space. And so now they're coming here and they want to essentially start, gathering and capturing clients. But they had no subject matter expertise whatsoever.
Mm.
And so when you start looking at, that domain expertise, and you mentioned one of those pillars being authority, what is the risk that organizations expose to themselves if they can't actually build that pillar?
Yeah, that's at the end of the day, that I don't think you can be successful if you can't effectively build that pillar, Jim, because, we have to understand the climate that we're in today. And that is that buyers are on a self-guided tour. So when I got started back in 1990, I was the door to knowledge. If somebody wanted to understand as a sales guy, hey, how can I buy storage to help accomplish whatever goals I'm trying to accomplish in my data center? Or how do I buy this technology? The only place they could go was to a salesperson to get that knowledge. So they would come to somebody like me and go, hey, my applications aren't running fast enough. I have these challenges. What do you recommend? And then we would come in and say, well, this is how we would solve that problem. Well, today, because of ubiquitous access to information, our customers are doing that on their own. The salesperson is no longer the gatekeeper of knowledge, if you will. And so the challenge that you're going to have if you cannot establish authority in a digital way is you're never going to communicate to that buyer that you are qualified to solve their problem. In fact, from a digital perspective, I just don't know how you win, because you have to communicate that. You don't know when they're going to come to your website. In fact, Gartner has come out recently and said the buyer is 80% through the buying process before they pick up the phone and talk to your sales guy, which means they've figured out, what is my problem? What are the best options to solve my problem? How can you solve my problem? Okay, now I'm going to talk to you. And so all of that is happening online. And if you are not communicating and establishing authority in some kind of a digital format, I don't think you're going to win.
Well, when I start thinking about that, I start looking at some of those budget issues. You talk about constraints, talk about reallocation. Well, what if, all those blinders are off? And I said, okay, spend what you want to spend, where you want to spend it. Where do they need to spend it?
So, I would start with, absolutely making sure that you've spent a little bit of time, and, this is more resource allocation than necessarily dollars, but, go through the process of understanding what is keeping my buyer awake at night, and what are the problems that I can solve for them, and what are the different ways that I can communicate that? What are the different modalities, from blogs to social posts to infographics to guides, things like that. I would make sure that you've spent the time. We don't want to throw spaghetti against the wall with limited budgets. We just don't have that capability, right? We've got to be pretty precise there. And that's the beautiful thing about strategy, is it's just brain power, right? We can get the right people in the room. We can spend some time together. We can come out with a pretty good plan. It doesn't cost any money to do that. And then from there, if I had a limited budget, I would definitely start thinking about, how can I push and buy a little bit of attention on sites like LinkedIn. The other thing that I would invest some money in right now, Jim, is a gated asset. So, some type of a downloadable PDF that continues to guide the customer through a buying decision, that enforces our value proposition, that would aid them. So it can't be just a brochure. It has to be, hey, download our white paper, our guide on options that you need to consider on how to solve this particular problem. It doesn't cost a lot of money today to get a graphic artist to kind of take your words and make them real pretty, and then make it something that somebody could download on your website. And once you have that in place, I would go and spend a little bit of money advertising and promoting that gated asset online. And we don't have time to go into all the different ways that you can do that today, but there's some very affordable, highly effective ways that you can do that on sites like LinkedIn and Twitter and other places. And after you've done that, then what I would really focus on is, now you've got somebody's information, let's get our sales reps involved. Let's engage in what we call social selling or digital selling. So every time somebody downloads that gated asset, they're an early cycle buyer. They may not be ready to talk to a sales rep, but hey, have your sales reps reach out to them on LinkedIn. Send them a connection request. Say, hey, I saw that you downloaded our PDF on XYZ topic. I'm your local rep, or I'm the guy that covers whatever. Here, I'd like to stay in contact with you. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. And then also start drip marketing to them. And that's a very basic rudimentary system that in today's climate would not cost a lot of money, but I think would work really, really well. One last comment on this mid-funnel PDF, downloadable PDF, put it on your website. I mean, I can't believe how many websites I look at, Jim, that are B2B, and the only call to action on their website is contact us or learn more. And often they don't even have that in the right place. Always like to see that top right in an offset color on their website, but then also include this mid-funnel gated PDF, because not everybody's ready to talk to a sales rep. In fact, some of the best B2B websites out there today convert about 3 to 5% of their traffic. That means that 95% of the people are coming to your website, even on the best websites, are going to come and go. But if you add a gated asset, you're going to convert a bunch of those folks into downloading that asset, especially if it's useful for them. And so that's a really good way to, invest a few dollars now and get some good value out of it.
Well, and so for me, the thing that you said in that explanation, in the detail, that I think is something we absolutely have to carry forward on an ongoing basis and talk about that memorization piece, is that, our buyer is on a self-guided tour.
Yeah, absolutely. They now are in control. There's this power shift. Back when I started out, I kind of was in control, and every salesman was, because we had the answers, right? Now the buyer is in control, and they don't want to give it up, Jim. I promise you that's never going to come back to the sales rep, right? And so rather than be disappointed about that, we can go back, and this goes right back to planning. Okay, they're in control. What do they need? Honestly, what does a buyer need to help them make an informed decision that will solve this problem that we are experts on solving? And let's understand that buyer journey and make sure that we call them assets, but we've created assets for every step of the way, and that we are promoting those assets out there online. They're on our website. We're promoting them as social posts. We're promoting them in blogs, and they're available because they're going to come to our website. We're not going to know that they're on our website necessarily until they opt into something or ask to talk to a sales rep. But let's give them what we know they need to help make that informed decision. And by the way, when we create those assets, we're able to add bias to it that helps formulate their beliefs on how to solve their problems that align with our features, advantages, and benefits. If we don't create those assets, guess what they're doing? They're going to your competitor's website. They're reading their website, downloading their assets, and their beliefs are getting formulated in a way that align with your competitor's features, advantages, and benefits, and not yours.
To me, that's also one of those, request for information or RFP processes as well. So in other words, if you get that blind RFP and your competitor's verbiage, don't bother responding.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, if you get that blind RFP and that's the first time you've heard of that company, probably don't even need to open it.
Don't try to get in a race you're bound to lose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so when I started thinking about all this, and we touched on several different points along those pillars and along the strategy, I started thinking about, okay, I need to get grounded, and I had to have a starting point. So what is an extremely important question that a B2B digital marketer needs to be asking themselves?
So, that's a great question, Jim. One of the first things I would encourage everybody to ask themselves is, just take a look at your current digital footprint and look at your footprint through the eyes of a buyer and ask yourself what's missing. If I were trying to buy from you today, what's missing? What's not there to answer the questions that they're going to answer on their own? And that will begin to help you formulate the things you need to go and create. So, one of the first things you need to do is just go look at, okay, what's missing on our blog? What's missing on our website? What's missing in the way that we're engaging in social media? And that will begin to help you understand some of the work that you can get started on that will make a big difference. Because communicating in the buyer's language and giving them what they need to win and to solve their problems is the most important thing you can do right now.
Most definitely. Paul Slack, I had fun with you today. Can you please share with the B2B DM gang how they can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is vendidigital.com, so feel free to check us out there. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so if you want to engage with me there, I'm posting 1 or 2 times a day. I really try to keep it focused on, how to help the digital marketer succeed, how to help the digital seller succeed. So just look me up, Paul Slack on LinkedIn, and those are really the 2 best ways, Jim.
Paul, thanks for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we all wish you the very best.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Go now to join the B2B DM gang in the B2B Marketer LinkedIn group, where you can connect with other B2B DM disruptors and get access to our B2B DM cheat sheets, checklist, and guides. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, please help by going to iTunes to rate, review, and subscribe. And share the show on all of your digital platforms. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode. And always remember, you can automate your lead capture, but you must lure your lead.